Well, Google's AI video generator Veo-2, which I've actually heard referred to a few times now as the Midjourney of AI video, is now out in the wild. Not the turbo mode that we saw released previously in YouTube Shorts, but like the full Big Daddy version. And as far as I can tell, you can use it worldwide. More than that, image to video is now available in Veo-2. But is it worth the cost? To quote an old meme, the rent is a little high. That said, the results of some of my tests were pretty remarkable. Plus, Minimax have updated their director mode to also include image to video. Is it as good as Veo-2? Let's find out. Kicking off, Veo-2 is now openly available on a number of platforms. It debuted on Freepik, which actually just last week I did a full deep dive on. So if you need to get caught up on Freepik, that video is linked down below. It's also available on a number of other platforms, including Fal.AI as well, where for a brief minute yesterday, I was able to run image to video on Fal. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, of course, previous to all of this, Veo-2 was either behind a closed beta or only more recently now available via YouTube Shorts. Although that version of Veo-2 is for sure a turbo model, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of resolution and obviously is limited to 9:16. But thankfully, as of last week, the Big Daddy version is slowly making the API rounds. Freepik, of course, as mentioned, did get it first, but I did get confirmation that Veo-2 will at least be showing up on Kyber fairly soon. So, I mean, give it a few weeks and it will be everywhere. Now, up until this point, there was no image to video with Veo-2. I mean, there kind of was, but you had to use Google's Imagen 3. And no shade on Imagen 3. I actually think it's a very good image generator, but it does lack a lot of like the extra processes and workflows that a lot of us like to use. Now, I will say that Veo-2 definitely does treat text to video and image to video differently. For example, in a test that I ran here of a dragon flying over not Winterfell, definitely not copyright infringing Winterfell. The dragon looks pretty good here, maybe moving a little bit slowly for my tastes. We are for sure getting some like morph and decoherence just a little bit on those town folk who are soon going to be barbecued. So running that same prompt as an image to video in Imagen 3 ended up giving us this, which kind of came out a little bit on the illustraty side, but I just rolled with it. To my eyes, the result is markedly improved. The dragon looks a lot cooler. We're even getting some like shadow play across the castle as it flaps its wings. Now, granted, I will say that the villagers aren't really acting particularly terrified. It's just sort of like, oh, the dragons, is it Tuesday already? Now, that said, external image to video is possible with Veo-2. It just hasn't been widely available until now. So depending on when you're watching this, currently the only way to use image to video is via Freepik, but I'm sure that will change as time goes on. So kicking off with this image and just giving it the simple prompt, two men arguing. The Veo-2 camera op was apparently a little drunk today and just decided to sort of sway in front of a light source. That said, it's a pretty decent output minus that. I don't necessarily know about the guy pointing at his nose at the beginning, but again, I don't know what these guys are arguing about. Moving on, I definitely wanted to see how Veo-2 would handle aesthetic styles. So taking this image and giving it the simple prompt of she looks through her scope and takes aim, we ended up with this. And this looks pretty good. She's definitely staying consistent to the style. She's not morphing into a real person. If you note on this camera move, as it moves to the left there, we have buildings that appear that remain consistent with the overall look of the scene. And I don't know if it's coming through or not via YouTube compression, but right around here, you can actually see some like water droplets from the rain on the barrel of the gun. So that's pretty impressive. That said, we might run into some issues here and there. Taking this image, which we ran last week in Skyreels and generated this up, the prompt was simply man lowers his gun and starts laughing. I was a little disappointed to see that it does the thing where it'll just randomly switch shots on you throughout the generation. Everything kind of stays stylistically the same. It's you're not really getting a full 8 seconds out of this of one shot. That said, there is a pretty interesting use case that I'll have for this coming up. Those cuts don't happen all the time, and you probably could get a generation that does not have one. If you re-rolled a few times, the problem is that Veo-2 is really expensive. But I did get a generation based off of this image, which I kind of liked. It kind of has that like 90s indie movie Lovers on the Run kind of vibe. So the prompt here was that the woman walks towards the camera and then the man turns and walks beside her. And we almost got there. He actually just kind of, well, maybe he's just dropping some stuff off to recycling before continuing on their murderous rampage. Overall, I really do have to give it up to Veo-2 here. The walk cycle is definitely really on point. She doesn't look like she's kind of ice skating across the ground like we see a lot of times in, AI video outputs. There is like a little bit of like an offness about the contact of her feet to the ground, but it's really kind of like splitting hairs at that point. I don't think you'd really notice unless you were looking for it. Rounding out with a few more image to video VO outputs before moving into some community outputs. This was a Midjourney generated image, superhero versus giant robot. The end of The Incredibles, if directed by Michael Bay. Overall, I thought the output was okay. Again, we're getting a pretty decent walk cycle on the giant robot. He's got a little bit of a stumble in him, but I do appreciate the fact that, it's kicking up dust and debris as it walks. It feels just a little bit off in terms of its weight, though. I did additionally put a prompt in for our superhero in the foreground to begin hovering as if, going over to battle the giant robot. We did not get that. Another kind of blockbuster test here. We have this UFO blowing up over, it looks like it's going to be the city of Philadelphia, considering that is the Liberty One building. Let's give this a roll. Overall, it's not a bad output. I was hoping for something a little more dramatic in terms of like the UFO crashing. In this case, it just kind of looks like it's deflating. Additionally, sort of all of the onlookers look, they look a little unimpressed with the whole thing, but maybe this is the morning after the Super Bowl and the UFO is exploding because a bunch of Eagles fans blew it up. I mean, they did it in celebration of the win, so everything's fine. Another example showcasing that AI video can still make me laugh. The shot here is obviously, very 80s espionage, Cold War dead drop, that sort of vibe. And the prompt provided was that the man on the right hands a suitcase to the man on the left and then pulls out a gun and shoots him. Veo-2 gives us this, which, that's really funny. Definitely not what we asked for, but hang on a second, because it gets really dark here at the end. Yeah, right here. Yeah, like shot to the head. So I don't think it's necessarily a content filter thing, considering that this shot is way more intense than my two silhouetted characters at a distance. And finally, I wanted to test it out with some older material, so I grabbed an image of Captain Renfield from my short Dead Sea, and running him with just the prompt, a pirate telling a somber tale. We ended up with this, in which it's kind of doing the Cuddy thing again. But what I've actually never really seen before is, having Captain Renfield be consistent across all of these cuts. Contrast that with running the same image and prompt in Sora, and Sora's going to do Sora stuff. Completely unrelated character, totally unrelated scene here. And I don't mean this to bag on Sora. I want them to do better. I want it to be good. Rounding out our Veo-2 section with some community outputs, Vladimir Chainer, hope I'm pronouncing that right, gives us an image of the most interesting wizard in the world. That is a fantastic beard, by the way. And as we can see here, Veo-2 kind of does its thing with cutting and giving us different shots from that scene. Although in this case, everything works pretty well contextually. And that's kind of what I was talking about with the Captain Renfield bit, is that I think that if you generate enough of this up, you'll definitely get a number of really useful cutaways. We also get this Veo-2 output of a dog that is clearly waiting for master to come home. And as I always say, I don't care if that dog is AI generated, it is a good dog. Jesus Plaza gives us this surrealist rotating shot of a crystal skull, a topic that no one has ever made a movie about. So overall, as an image to video model, it's okay. It's definitely great at some things and it struggles at other things, kind of like all of the various video generators. As of right now, yeah, you probably could use it entirely for a project. The problem, of course, is the cost. Currently, the cost to run the Veo-2 API from Google is 50 cents a second. And that's kind of a lot. Just as a point of comparison, the Kling API, even at its sort of lowest tier, only runs 14 cents per generation. Obviously, it gets lower as you generate more. And while the results do look very good, at least until those costs come down, I would really recommend, looking into Kling, Minimax, Luma, etc. That is, unless you have very specific text-to-video ideas in mind. That is one place that Veo-2 very much still rules the roost. In the meantime, if you're looking to up your game on the image to video side, well, let's go check out what Minimax has got brewing. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into this as I did cover this feature in the text to video version of this, but just make sure that you have the Ve0-1 Director Mode turned on down here, and then you have a number of different controls. If you hit the insert camera movement button here, everything from track left and right, panning up and down, tilting up and down, and then cinematic shots like left circling, right circling, on and on it goes. Going back to that image that we ran in Veo-2, and then issuing the same prompt alongside a truck right, pan left tracking shot gives us this. Interestingly here as well is that our character actually, it follows the prompt. Our guy actually does turn around and begin walking alongside of her. Just on top of it, the camera move itself adds just a lot more like dimension to this shot. Another Veo-2 comparison here. In this, I added in the camera movement of shake. And while I have to admit the shake it's a little on the subtle side, the plus side here is that Minimax actually did listen to the prompt and gives us our, not Supergirl actually hovering up to meet the challenge. You can also combine called out shots within the same prompt, although, we only have like 6 seconds to use here. For example, here we have a truck right, pan left in a tracking shot. This woman comes up. She's supposedly telling a somber story, but it doesn't really look that somber to me. But then I follow that with the zoom in. As you can see at the very last few frames, we start moving into that zoom in. So, hopefully Minimax will start to get up into the 8 to 10 second mark because I think that's where you're going to see this pay off. Another example of AI video showcasing it has a sense of humor. The prompt here is the woman stands up, slowly turns around, and then called shot tracking shot, walks away, and we ended up with this, where she does indeed stand up, turn around, and then just walks to another bar. Somebody make sure that she's calling an Uber. One thing that I am really impressed with is how the new director mode maintains stylistic consistency across. For example, taking this kind of like animated look, giving it a pan right and a zoom in, the prompt, the giant robot takes a slow step forward. We end up with this where indeed we are getting the pan right, we are getting the zoom in. And once again, the giant robot is staying very consistent, as well as essentially all of the scenery that we're seeing to the right of the frame. Now, I will say that when you try to issue multiple commands, you won't always get them. And additionally, if you try to bring additions into the scene, well, that's where the text to video model takes over. For example, here we had a tracking shot of a man walking down a hallway into a pan right zoom in of a door opening up to reveal a clown holding a red balloon in a green hued room. We ended up with this. And look, to its credit, while it missed the tracking shot, it did give us the clown, although the clown, still terrifying, but it does have that very text-to-video look to it. So for now, at least, if you're planning on adding new elements into your shot, just, kind of have a text-to-video mindset. In the meantime, just via camera controls, we can get some pretty cool, camera movement happening like this shot. And lastly, of course, I did have to see if we could do the famous Jaws Zolly shot, zooming in on the character, zooming out on the background. And no, we just kind of end up with a zoom in and a zoom out. It's okay. It's a very specialized shot. Minimax's image to video director mode is, of course, available right now, so you can go start playing around with it. I guess that's it for today. I'll be back later on this week, so definitely let me know in the comments if you've seen anything really cool that you think I should check out. I will definitely add it to the list. The list is pretty long, but always on the lookout for new stuff. In the meantime, I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.